Morning guys, and welcome back. This is our third video of Unit 9, and today we're going to be talking about dental caries or cavities, and we'll also be talking about periodontal disease. So let's get started. First we'll talk about dental caries, and last day we were talking about the formation of plaque, biofilms, and how plaque accumulated in our teeth, what it was made of. We didn't really get into how it functions, and one of the functions of these biofilms is that it attracts a lot of microbial life. Now all these little microorganisms are going to go through regular metabolism, just like we looked at in lab, several times. One of the results from microbial metabolism is tiny holes in the enamel of our teeth, and those are what we call dental caries. So these form within the enamel of our teeth because we have the presence of these microorganisms. We looked at in lab when we feed sugars, carbohydrates to most bacteria, they will ferment that sugar and produce an acid. Think about our fermentation tubes that went from a red color to a yellow color. So the change in pH goes from neutral to acidic. Now if this acid is allowed to sit next to our teeth for long periods of time, it will demineralize or take the mineral away from our enamel and develop these tiny holes that we call caries. So if we look down here at the bottom figure, we've got a healthy tooth right here, but there is some plaque starting to form in these areas right here. Now that plaque, as you know, is going to be full of bacteria, and they're going to be fermenting. So any sugars that you eat, they're going to take those sugars and they're going to turn them into acid. Now the longer that acid's allowed to sit next to the teeth, you can see these formation of these tiny holes. Unless it's treated, then it can get worse and then worse, and so on and so forth. So that's basically how we develop caries, or holes in our teeth. We start off with, of course, the plaque. So a dull spot on a person's tooth, the formation of the pellicle, and then the biofilm. However, if you do keep up good oral hygiene, if you're flossing and you're brushing your teeth, you will prevent this formation of plaque, and as a result of that, you will prevent you'll prevent the formation of cavities. Now, if we look down at the picture down here in the blue, we'll notice that you get the formation of plaque in places of the tooth that are hard to brush away. So little crevices in the crown and between the gum and where the enamel meets the gum. Now, like we talked about before, these bacteria will ferment, you'll have the formation of acid, and eventually you'll get the breakdown in the enamel, which will cause a cavity. Now if you go to the dentist right here now, they will drill out that part of the cavity and they'll fill it, and you'll be as good as new. That's assuming that the cavity hasn't gotten down into this yellow tissue here, which is the dentin. Now if the cavity breaks through like it has in this picture and it's got into the dentin right here, that's going to be very, very painful, because now the dentin has a connection with the pulp below, and in the pulp below we're going to have blood vessels, we're going to have nerve tissue, and you're really going to be able to feel pain. So at this stage here, it's going to be quite painful. If the cavity is allowed to extend into the actual pulp, that's going to be very, very painful. And this is to the point now where you probably end up with a root canal. So there's a couple of quick videos that you can watch to show you some of the finer notes on the formation of dental cavities. Now let's have a look at what bacteria are behind this. And we call bacteria that create cavities, we call them karyogenic bacteria. Now we've already talked about the word genic and what genic means. It means to create, and then a karyogenic means to create dental caries. And one of the major culprits of this is a group of bacteria we collectively call Streptococcus mutans. There's 7 different species that make up this mutans group, and what they do really well is they are very fast at fermenting sugars to produce acid, and they also release these extracellular polysaccharides. And what those do is they allow other species of bacteria to come in and stick to this polysaccharide, and it allows plaque to build up faster. It allows bacteria to form plaque where they couldn't before, and it boosts the amount of acid that's going to be next to the tooth that can cause a cavity. So our biggest karyogenic bacteria group are the Streptococcus mutans. And on this picture down here, you can see the formation of these tiny dental caries, these little holes right here in the tooth, and that's a result of plaque sitting there too long, and those Streptococcus mutans just really eating whatever sugars they can get, or they can possibly get, and converting those to acid, and those acids sits next to the enamel, eats it away slowly, and eventually it starts to damage the enamel of the tooth, and that's of course what we call a carie. Now, another species that's going to give us trouble when we talk about cavities are this group of lactobacillus species. They're not a primary cause of dental caries. That's going to be the Streptococcus mutans. But these bacteria, they're also quite good at producing acid, lactic acid in particular. And we associate these cavities with, these species with cavities that have extended into the dentin. So this type of species, this lactobacillus species, will be quite commonly found in cavities that have been around for a long time. Down here we've got our chain of decay, so we get our bacterial species that we've just been talking about, S. mutans and lactobacilli. If we feed those, or we're not doing it on purpose of course, but they get the food when we eat, they get the sugars you can see here, and then that will produce the acid that will dissolve tooth mineral. So the idea is to stop it at this point. I mean, we're not going to be able to stop them from eating the sugars that we eat, but we want to stop them from producing too much acid, allowing plaque to form. So that's why we use fluoride, and you find fluoride in most municipal water systems, as well as in your toothpaste, and that'll help prevent this step right here, where the acid can dissolve tooth enamel. Some of these another species that's quite commonly found to cause cavities are these actinomyces species, and just like the lactobacillus, they're not the common ones, they're not the most the first ones, but these are most associated with caries on the root surface of the tooth. So you know the root is going to be below the gum line, so everything down here below that is going to be the root. And if you have a cavity that forms in the root, like this one right here, then this is probably going to have these species of actinomyces present. Now, one of the things that they can do is they can cause cysts and stuff to form on the outside of the tissue. So you can see here on this person's chin, on the side of their cheek, they've got pustules and they've got tissue damage as a result of this actinomyces bacteria that have caused tooth decay. One of the peculiar things about these group of species, the actinomycetes, if you grow them on agar, they actually look like molars. They look like teeth, which reminds you, or some microbiologists say, it reminds you the fact that they can cause tooth caries. Now, how do we control and prevent dental caries? That's relatively straightforward, actually. Our most important tool is, of course, good oral hygiene. So brushing your teeth, flossing, regularly using mouthwash, that's our best defense. There's other things that we can do. Of course, we want to change our diet so we reduce the amount of sugar that the bacteria can convert to acid. So getting rid of sweets and soft drinks and stuff like that, that'll reduce the amount of sugar that the bacteria have access to. Fluorides will help strengthen our teeth, and you can find those in mouthwash, toothpaste, your water supply, and in some cases it can also help rebuild enamel to a little bit. So those are really important. Sealants, I guess another word for a sealant would be a filling that the dentist will put in if you have a cavity. So if you catch a cavity early, which is why you go to the dentist often, you can add this sealant, and that will prevent the cavity from forming, growing deeper into the dentin, into the pulp, so it will reduce the chances of having major damage. And Finally, reducing the amount of karyogenic bacteria, and we can do that by regularly brushing, regularly going to the dentist for cleaning, so we don't allow buildup of plaque, and that'll help us prevent cavities and help keep our teeth healthy for a long time. This is a funny little cartoon showing, what are the disease-causing factors, and these are the bad ones. So bad bacteria, absence of saliva, having a dry mouth, poor dietary habits, so eating lots of sugars and stuff like that. And then we have our protective factors, our safe factors. So saliva, making sure your mouth is adequately moistened. Sealants, going to the dentist and getting a filling if you need it. Antimicrobials, so gargling with mouthwash, using toothpaste. Again, fluoride, toothpaste, mouthwash. And in the water supply, and then of course an effective diet. So having a healthy diet that doesn't have a ton of sugars in it will help you, or help prevent dental caries.